Hello guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel, or welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Eva, and today's video, as you can probably already tell, is going to be a little bit different. I haven't been able to film outside. I've just been a little bit busy and all, so today's video is going to be indoors. It is like currently 11:30, so I did plan to do this experiment quite late into the evening because I've heard that improves your results, probably because your brain's a little more tired. But today's video is going to be on the Troxler effect, or otherwise known as mirror gazing. Very interesting experiment to be doing. So in a little bit I'm going to turn these lights down and light up some little tea light candles, and then I have my mirror behind me. The Troxler effect, it happens when you stare into a mirror too long, and it happens because your brain filters out information that doesn't change. So the Troxler effect was first described in the 1800s by a man by the name of Ignace Troxler. I'm probably butchering his name, but he was a Swiss doctor, and he described that the Troxler effect causes your brain to forget objects that aren't moving. So when your eyes focus on one spot, the other things around change, sometimes even disappear. And I'm going to be exploring that. I'm going to do 2 trials of 10 minutes each. So without further ado, I'm going to get these lights down and light up these candles. So after a little more research, I found that scientifically, the reason the Troxler effect happens is because when you stare at a fixed point, your neurons stop responding to the things around it. And basically your brain decides the details aren't important enough for you to be seeing them anymore. So that's why when you stare in the mirror long enough, the things around disappear. Guys, this is my current setup. I have my candles lit and my timer in front of me. It is not as bright as it looks, but I have the brightness down as low as it goes. You can definitely tell how dark it is with the mirror. I know the brightness of the lights don't affect it too much. It was just said that it works better in low lights, so that's what I went ahead and did. I can see my face clearly in the reflection, although I can't see it that well on the phone, but I'm not really going to be paying too much attention to the phone. I'm going to go ahead and get started on my first 10 minutes. Last update before I start is that I actually turned my exposure all the way up on my camera so that you guys can see a little bit better. So for my first trial, I sat in front of my mirror with some somewhat dim lights from my LEDs, and I tried to keep my eyes locked on one point, usually right between my eyes. The first minute or two wasn't so much, but just honestly after staring at myself for such a long time, it started to kind of look like I was crying, and I knew I wasn't crying, but just kind of the expression on my face kept kind of changing. One eye looked a little sadder, kind of droopier than the other, which was kind of odd. About 5 minutes in, my whole face kind of started to blur a little bit, and it would kind of distort, not a lot, but just a noticeable amount. My mouth looked like it was twitching, and so would my eyes. It would kind of look like it was moving, but it didn't feel like I was moving my face at all. When you twitch, you can feel yourself twitching even though it's an involuntary movement. This was I couldn't feel myself moving, but I could see it. For the second trial, I had lower lighting. I just had my candles and the very small amount of brightness on my screen, and I set up my phone again. But this time, without knowing, when I started filming, my phone canceled out the brightness from my screen on my computer and made it not show the time that I was sitting. I'm not sure what happened there that it blurred it out, but I went again for another 10 minutes. Around the halfway point, I started seeing again that kind of blurring effect, just distortions again. And after a while, my jaw started looking very odd and out of place, in my mouth. My lips just looked wrong. It was really odd, just seeing the bottom half of my face, it just didn't feel like it was my face. By the end, I was honestly kind of freaked out. The visuals were causing a little bit of anxiety, a pressure in my chest. I think that was mostly me psyching myself out. When I looked away, it felt just snap out of it, back to normal, everything was fine. So what do I think? I think the Troxler effect is a very interesting experiment, very cool to try. I definitely recommend trying it if you're into kind of meditative or even spiritual things. It was definitely a very interesting experience. It's kind of your brain filtering and replacing stuff that isn't moving just because it has scientific explanation doesn't mean that it can't be a cool way to kind of explore what your brain is kind of thinking about. I would definitely recommend trying it only if you're like comfortable with seeing things that are kind of spooky a little bit. I definitely saw some like interesting stuff going on with like my face like replacing itself and just kind of feeling that derealization. Definitely for someone who isn't in a healthy headspace, that would not be fun, but it was kind of cool to experience, at least for me. I just wanted to talk a little bit more about some other effects that I found very interesting. The first and most well-known is probably the lilac chaser illusion. It's just simply a ring of purple dots with one missing, and when you stare at the center long enough, the purple ones fade and green dots appear. You can't really follow them with your eyes though, so when you look around trying to see the green dots, you can't really follow them. Then there's something called the blurred face illusion, where when you stare at two faces side by side and focus between them, the features start to stretch and warp. It's kind of cool. It's kind of similar to the Troxler effect in my opinion, just with the faces changing and distorting. Another one that's really simple is the after image effect. This is probably one that a lot of people have seen, is when you stare at a bright shape or color for a long time and then look at something like a blank wall, you'll still see the shape somewhat quote unquote burned into your vision. Your brain basically kind of echoes the image. There's something else called the Gainesfield effect, which is a little less known and a lot more complicated. It's when you cover your eyes with something, most of the time like a ping pong ball halves, and like listen to static or like white noise. Your brain starts to create its own visual and sounds to fill in the silence. Some people say it kind of feels like hallucinating. All of these are like somewhat well known, and all of them are experiments I love and would love to try, especially Gainesfield effect. Honestly, they kind of prove the same point, that our brains don't show us reality exactly as it is. They show us the version that's easiest to process. So if you don't feel like sitting in front of a mirror for 10 minutes, which feels a lot longer than it actually is, there's other ways to test how weird your mind can get. I just want to say thank you guys so much for watching this one. I know it was different from my usual content being only 2 videos, but I want to keep consistent, keep pumping out videos, even though there's not that many people watching. I'm really excited with how this is going so far. So if you do want to see me doing more experiments like this every once in a while, or if you've tried it yourself, please let me know in the comments. Comments really are appreciated. They definitely bring in more engagement, and they are really helpful for me to like know like what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong, what you guys like to see, stuff like that. If you are new here and this is your first video seeing me, please subscribe and let me know your opinions on how I'm doing so far. Thank you guys for watching. Have a good night.